I started a blog about a year and a half ago called foodbabe.com. And I never really realized the kind of power a food blog kind of gives you in the marketplace, especially when people start to listen to you and listen to the ideas that you're saying. And it wasn't until I started talking about some of the misleading marketing practices within the organics and within the natural companies, and they were using these terms and kind of greenwashing their brands. And I called out a couple companies, a company here in town, and they actually changed their marketing based on something that I was, talking about and something I experienced. So I kind of realized my power as a blogger then, and so I took it kind of to the next level. And I started blogging about specific companies and what kind of food they were producing and what the ingredients they were putting inside the food and where their food was coming from. And one success story recently is I did several articles on the fast food chain, which I'm sure everyone in the South is very familiar with, Chick-fil-A, and they were so inspired by the amount of people that I had react to some of my writings about them, including things like MSG and where they got their chicken from, and putting food coloring in their ice cream and things like that. That so many moms and so many people had written in and said they didn't want to eat there anymore. They invited me to consult with them, and I went last week. And it was really interesting experience, and there's a hopefully a change around the corner. We'll have to see.
Awesome, Sarah. So I think it's just really exciting, being able to speak with her. I've been contacting with her back and forth for the past few months, and we actually met over Facebook. She's heard of me through a couple video talks that I've done, and I've come across her blog with a lot of the amazing stuff that she's done. So I think she sent me an email or a Facebook message one day and just say, "Hey Birke, how you doing? I'm a blogger, and just and this is my blog," and just kind of introducing herself. And I just couldn't believe, that I've been reading her blog for a little while. I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, I know you. and so I sent her a thing back, and I'm like, hey, yeah, it's great to finally hear from you. I've been reading your blog for a little while, and the stuff that you do is just amazing. And so from there we started talking, and eventually she invited me to come over to, if I'm ever in Charlotte, to come and have lunch or dinner with her, so we can just hang out and talk, And so I think it was about a couple weeks ago, and I was talking with one of the organizers of this event, and I was telling her, yeah, I'm actually going to come in a day early and have dinner with Vani the night before I do the obesity summit. And she goes, oh yeah, Vani, the food babe? I'm like, yeah. And she's like, it'd be awesome if we could have her come and speak. And so, yeah, and so it eventually turned out that we were able to, come and speak at the same time and share the stage. So I think it's great. That's sort of what's led up to this event. So,
well, when I wrote that comment on Birke's wall, he's being very modest, but I said something probably really glowing about what he's been doing, and the cool thing about Birke is that he's reaching out to the people that are going to really be able to change the way people are eating in America, and be able to change what they're eating, so that eventually the food companies will get the message that young adults and the people growing in this country, going to lead this country, don't want any of the junk anymore in their food. And so Birke's got a really amazing opportunity to start at a very young age and to prevent all the mistakes that I made growing up eating McDonald's and Taco Bell and Burger King and Wendy's. I mean, I haven't had any of that stuff in so long, but it's probably been like 10 years, but I still remember the difference between a Wendy's hamburger and a Burger King hamburger and a McDonald's hamburger and what a Chick-fil-A chicken sandwich tastes like. I mean, I remember all of it, and it's because the food industry is engineering our food in such a way that we remember it, it makes us want it all the time, and it makes us eat more than we should, and that's why we're here today, is to stop obesity. And so we have to really pay attention to the ingredients these food companies are putting inside the food, so they make us remember all of these things and crave these things when we really shouldn't. We should feel satisfied and not really. I mean, I don't think I can remember any of my mom's home cooked meals when I was 6 or 7, but I remember those chicken McNuggets, And so it's really interesting what kind of tricks are playing on your brain.
Yeah, sort of going with that whole tricks on your brain. I've found found that through my research, it's led me, it's actually started me at a very simple subject, which was high fructose corn syrup. And I, simply just started getting into this and wanted to know how it was processed, how it would get certain things in there. And I guess it was about 6 months ago or so, I came across an article that actually was when the big PR campaign by the Corn Refiners Association was going on, saying whether it's corn or cane, it's not the same. And when your body can't tell the difference if it's high fructose corn syrup or cane sugar. But I came across this article by some pediatric doctor that said that high fructose corn syrup, you can keep on chugging the Coke and it won't send the same signals to your brain and tell you that you're full. But you'll have a couple sugarcane Cokes or whatever sodas you may drink, and it'll tell you eventually once you've had enough or had enough calories, so it'll tell you you're full, that's enough, I can't have any more. And so and you really look at these things and you fact checks a lot of these companies, and you'll see where they're putting out false facts and false advertising, trying to get you stooped and show you that, hey, look, we're trying to do something good out there when they're really not.
And just to add to that comment about high fructose corn syrup, Birke makes some really good points. High fructose corn syrup is very refined. So it's something that's completely extracted from corn and put through all of this process and bleached and manipulated in such a way that there's hardly any nutrients left that were originally in the corn. And what I like to tell people, and what you guys can take back, is you can talk to the people and say, when you eat things, when you eat all the things that you put in your body, you want to make sure there's some nutrition left in it. And if there's no minerals or vitamin content left in it, which in high fructose corn syrup there really isn't, no one should really even be eating that. And so, some of the more the better choices for sugar come in, like palm sugar or pure cane sugar, which actually has the minerals still intact, and it kind of gives you those signals of like when you should stop and you should feel full. So,
and just to give you guys a little story that I knew is that I had some friends that are sort of into this movement too, and they know all about it. They'll watch the videos on YouTube. And so I was having a sleepover at one of their houses, and they go, "Oh, dude, I saw this awesome YouTube video. You gotta watch it." And so it's this guy, and he's going down the street in his SUV or whatever, and he sees a little sign for punch. And so he stops and he pulls over. And he goes, "Okay, I'll have a glass for 5 cents." So he gives the little girl a nickel, and she goes, "Okay, here we go." She goes, "1 glass of water, 3 cups of sugar." She goes, 80 drops of red 5, and starts putting in the food coloring, and she goes, "and 1 ladle full of high fructose corn syrup." And she pulls out this Rubbermaid container, drops it on the stand, pulls out this ladle, and it's like this weird looking syrup that's like has these little air bubbles in it, and it's like this yellowish tint, clearish like syrup dropping into the cup. He kind of backs away when she's doing that, and he goes, "You just keep that." But it's one of those things that you gotta kind of look into the ingredients and where your food's coming from, and that's what has really led me on such a journey. Is I've become such a food detective and wanting to know everything from how my seeds were grown, what type of seed they were using, what they were doing on the process while they were growing, how they got to my supermarket, and how they were eventually processed and treated before I got that on my dinner table.
How many people here know what genetically modified seeds are? Wow, this is really good. This is really good. So for the folks that didn't raise their hand, just real quick, what Birke's talking about is where our seeds are coming from. And right now in the United States, approximately 90% of our corn, 85% of our soy, a big percentage of our sugar beets, and all of basically our canola is genetically modified, and it's coming from these seeds that have been manufactured in a laboratory, and they're splitting DNA and putting in insecticide and herbicides and toxins into the seeds so that when insects eat these seeds on the field when they're planted, they actually die because inside their stomachs, it kind of like explodes inside their stomach. It causes like their stomachs to basically erupt inside the insect. And so you've got to think like what's going to happen to humans when down the road of when we continue to eat this stuff. And the problem with this is that over 50 countries label these genetically modified seeds, but we do not. We're actually one of the only countries that doesn't. So it's it seems kind of odd that the United States hasn't given us the right to know if we're eating these type of seeds or not. And it's in 90% of our processed food, because as you guys have probably learned through all of your teachings, is that a lot of our food is produced via corn and soy, and so it's, you know, mass produced and extracted and made into different other ingredients that go into the processed food. And so I think you know, because of this California initiative that maybe you guys have heard of as well, called Proposition 37, where a grandmother, Pam Larry, decided one day that she's had enough, and basically got close to a million signatures in California in order to get this on the ballot. It's now going to be voted on in California on November 6th. And so this is one of the most kind of crucial moments in our food history. I mean, this really could make or break the movement to basically changing our food industry in America. And so we have like a really exciting time, and you guys are part of an exciting movement where you can start teaching people about these genetically modified seeds and tell them about some of the dangers. And you know, just to give you one, and I'm sure Birke can give you a couple examples too, but just to give you one is when rats were fed genetically modified soy, they ate more than when they ate conventional soy. So you've got to think, you know, as the obesity increases, and I think the latest numbers is that 2 in 3 of us are going to be obese in the next 10 years, which is just crazy to think about, 66% of us. And then the increase of genetically modified ingredients in our society has just increased since 1996. You know, that correlation has to be studied, and people need to look into that. And our government's not doing that right now because they're not labeling these foods for us to even know if we're consuming them.
And just kind of adding on to the GMO subject is that recently a study was done by a French scientist. It was the first long-term study ever done for longer than I think about 3 months. And that this long-term study was done for 2 years, and they were feeding multiple generations of rats and mice, GMO corn, I believe. And what they found is that after these 2 years, they started finding all these certain things: birth defects, infertility, large tumors in the animals, kidney and liver lesions. And a lot of stuff actually would also lead to their digestive system too, because they were eating these, I like to say, these frankenfoods. And what they found is that they also found massive weight gain in these rats because, like she said, they were eating more of the soy or the corn, you know. And so obesity, I think, connects with a lot of things that we're eating and a lot of things that are happening in our food system. And because these companies are sneaking in things that may be cheaper for them, but not as healthy for us. And so they're cutting down the bottom dollar for them so they can have a higher profit. And you look at a lot of these things and it's greed. But see, I'm trying to change a lot of this stuff, and I actually live in Tennessee, the next door neighbor to North Carolina, which is actually at this time, I believe the last study I saw was the 3rd most obese state in the union. And a lot of people go, oh, well, you know, that's childhood obesity versus, you know, adult obesity. And I go, it's still obesity, and we need to make a difference, and we need to change this. And you need to look how things are being produced and done. And I've just really found that one of the largest problems in our food system these days is the genetically modified organisms. And the reason why I like to focus on it so much is because they're so hidden from us, and the government allows these companies to kind of hide them away. Because one of the largest manufacturers of these GMO seeds, Monsanto, has their foot in the door in many government agriculture organizations like the FDA and USDA. And so I just think that we need to start getting these people, these insiders almost, keeping their politicians out of there that have been either formerly on their bankroll or a former lawyer or VP for them. I just think we need to get those people out there, people that don't have any connections to a company that can gain from it in our political system.
Yeah, and one of the things that I was privileged to do just recently is I was a delegate at the Democratic National Convention. I ran to be a delegate so that I could spread more awareness about this issue with the leaders, with the people that I helped get in office, and kind of hold them accountable, because President Obama in 2007 during his campaign said that he wanted to label these genetically modified ingredients, and as you guys know, it hasn't happened in the last 4 years. And he can't get everything done in the first 4 years. So I give him that, maybe he'll try to get this done in the next 4 years. But looking at the way he's stacked the people that are in government that Birke is talking about, the head of the U.S., the United States Secretary of Agriculture, Tom Vilsack, who was the governor of Iowa, who deregulated genetically modified crops in his own state, and getting Michael Taylor to be the deputy of the FDA, a person who's a former lawyer for this big seed manufacturer, Monsanto. So, all of the cards are kind of stacked against us. And when I asked my own senator here from North Carolina, Senator Kay Hagan, why didn't you vote for the recent amendment in the Farm Bill allowing states to label genetically modified ingredients for themselves? And she said, listen, we got to look at the science. And I thought about that, and I said, science has nothing to do with our right to know what we're eating. It's a fundamental human right, and it's one of the most un-American things that I can think of that we don't have the right to know. And I think, this is an issue that most of the people I talk to, mayors of cities, different congressional leaders, even some celebrities, they just didn't even know about this issue as much as I had hoped. And you guys here, if you can spread the message and let people know where to find genetically modified ingredients, and it's really about finding the corn and the soy and finding the canola oils that are kind of inundated and everything. And when you look at the back of the label, if it doesn't say organic, it probably is genetically modified. And if you can help people realize that, and then maybe even institute something where you can create a movement. There's one thing that me and Birke are both been spreading on our Facebook pages and our Twitters is GMO Free Friday. Make every Friday GMO free, so that everything you check and everything you eat, you make sure you avoid corn and soy and sugar beets and canola and papayas from Hawaii. And there's a whole list of 8 genetically modified crops that you can get on the Institute of Responsible Technology.org site, and there's also another site, non-GMOproject.org. That you can find these lists and kind of avoid, and they have shopping guides that kind of help you. And if you can get like your schools involved in doing this like GMO Free Friday, and maybe even get your cafeteria involved and get one dish on Friday that everyone can order that's GMO free. It can get to the point where if we can reduce the bottom line of these major companies that are using these genetically modified ingredients by 5%, they will start to wake up and say, well, maybe we shouldn't use this. And they'll take it out of their products. And that's what happened in Europe. When Europe decided to label genetically modified ingredients years ago, instead of the companies putting the label on there that it's genetically modified, they willingly took the ingredients out. And that's what we're really hoping for here in America, because we just don't know the long-term effects of this, and we're the guinea pigs. Especially the young people. I mean, because almost all of your food is genetically modified since you were born. At least me, in the 80s, I had some good food before it was invented. So it's a really good opportunity for you to almost like save human society. I mean, it's absolutely fundamental to where we're going to be in several hundred years.
Yeah, and this, as she said, Michael Taylor. He's a deputy in the FDA, and he was actually a former Monsanto exec. He was the vice president of Monsanto for a little while. And I like to kind of focus on Monsanto because they're one of the largest seed producers of these genetically modified organisms. They own a monopoly of a lot of different other companies, a lot of seed companies. They've bought out about 80% of this country's seed companies over the past, 10, 20 years. And by doing that, they've become such a monopoly, such a conglomeration where they have so much power in the political system these days, where they try to get their former employees on the boards of FDA and USDA. And so that's the sort of thing that they've become so powerful. But kind of looking at the health effects of these GMOs is that Monsanto's been a producer of a lot of different things that have turned out to be really bad for us. Like Monsanto produced DDT, which is originally said to be safe, and now it's turned out to be, after that it turned out to be very harmful to our body. Then they produced Agent Orange, supposedly safe. Now it's turned out to be bad for our body, and started killing people. And so these GMOs are supposedly safe, but right now there's nothing to say that, found out that they've done a lot of stuff to them, or that the government says they're credible. And so we need to finally, find a good credible source saying that they're not safe, where that they'll, just like DDT, they'll get it all out of our system. And I think this Monsanto, because they're such a large conglomeration, I like to have I've heard this awesome nickname that I hear a lot of people call them, and I like to call them Monsanto. So I just think they're just one of the most evil. They've been voted actually as the most evil company in the world, I think 3 or 4 years in a row.
So we just want to open it up for questions, I think, right? Yeah.
Why wouldn't they stop genetically modified seeds?
I think one reason why they don't stop them yet is mainly because the companies have such a hand in the back pocket of the government, because they have their former employees in the Capitol and in Washington, voting for these GMOs so they can keep their product inside the food system and keep making money off of it as long as they can, until something big happens off of it, so that we have to they end up saying, okay, yeah, we got to take it off. They're just going to try to make as many dollars as they can until they get kicked out.
Why do they need GMO?
So the reason why genetically modified seeds were invented is so that these companies who used to sell just chemicals, like the companies that are selling these seeds are Dow, Syngenta, BASF, and Monsanto. Those are the big ones, and those were basic chemical companies before these seeds were developed. And so they figured out, hey, why don't we develop a seed that corresponds with our #1 pesticide killer, Roundup, and let's create this system so the farmer is completely dependent upon us, so that we can make as much money as humanly possible. And we will promise the farmer more yields. We'll promise them that they can produce more in the ability of droughts. That it will be better for that they'll use less pesticide. We'll even say that it's going to be less pesticide. But you know what? That's all been wrong. A study just came out 3 weeks ago that said 400 million more pounds of herbicide has been used since the inception of genetically modified seeds. So that's 400 million more pounds of chemicals being inundated in our environment. And when you think about the President's Cancer Panel, this is a panel that advises the President every few years on how the American citizens are going to avoid cancer. Their #1 recommendation is to avoid these chemicals and to eat organic and to make sure that they choose food without these pesticides. But at the same time, the government is subsidizing these corn and soy farmers who are buying these genetically modified seeds. So you can see there's this whole cycle of corruption and cycle of just health issues that could occur from all these things.
And she really said it right there that you look at these GMOs and they do have a lot of health issues connected to them. And you look at them, and the worst part about it is that these companies and the government has allowed them to be snuck into our food system. We don't even without doing a lot of research, you don't even know about them. And so that's just why they become such an issue for me, is because nobody hardly ever knows about them. And I really want to get the word out there and educate more people about such a serious subject.
I guess I have 2 questions. The first question is, at a basic foundation, how do you get a majority of people to care? And then the second question, and I say that from the general American population perspective, right? Because you have a unique situation here where you have people who have bought in already. So it's sort of like singing a song to the choir, right? So how do you get people who wake up every day and they're just trying to survive? Or how do you get people who wake up every day and none of this means anything to them because they have so much other stuff going on, to actually care about the subject matter and to make it so that they will make an impact in their homes? So that's the first question. The second question is, how do you explain to people, I know you're saying that it is all part of a big cycle, but for me, it is even larger than just saying there are health issues, because I feel like there's something more sinister going on here. I feel like, you know, you're saying on the one hand, we want better health care, we want better health care. You're playing down, you know, the fact that people do actually want to make changes to health care, but all of this to me is related, from the seed until the grave. So yeah, you might have this GMO issue, but that's dollar menu to me. You know, I see that in the McDonald's dollar menu. I see that in people saying, I can't afford to go buy spinach, but I can afford to buy a chicken sandwich from McDonald's. To me, the dollar menu is not the dollar menu. The dollar menu is the death menu. So how do you then show people that bigger picture? And I guess both of the questions are sort of related.
The way the government is subsidized our food, the way that food manufacturers have control over our food system, you know, there's a lot of compromise that you have to make, you know, for those individuals. And for that, to get them to care, I think it all has to do with education. And the thing is that the government's not going to educate them on that. You know, these conferences are not going to educate them on GMOs. They're just not. I mean, I don't think there's probably not a single session on GMO probably at this conference. And that's why it was so important for Birke and I to even talk about this today, because I think it's absolutely the fundamental issue of what is causing all the other stuff, why people are going and need more health care, you know, why there's increases in cancer and heart disease and obesity and all the things that are related to all the diseases that come from that. So, you know, I think the key thing is to spread the awareness through like the young folks, get them to understand that eventually our entire farmland could be toxic fields full of pesticides and chemicals, and the only way for us to avoid cancers is really through it's not by, you know, it's not just by being healthy, it's about avoiding the chemicals that you're ingesting and you're eating. And that's why you become obese in the first place, is because you're eating things that are not providing you nutrition, so you're constantly looking for gratification. And you constantly look to eat more because that dollar menu item isn't providing you all the vitamins and minerals that you need. So that's where we have to work really hard in getting to that message to the very bottom level. And that's one of the hardest things. I mean, and that's why we have such a huge disparity between the poor and the rich.
So, as she was saying, the chemicals in the food these days is just unreal. And it's actually found that actually our body fat holds most of our chemicals. So that's why that's why people are gaining so much weight, is because there are so many chemicals we're intaking from our food daily that our body doesn't know what to do with it, and they're waiting for a time where, you know, our livers or kidneys can take it. But until then, they're storing it away in our fat. And I believe there was something found where there's only over like 6,400 different chemicals that can be found in the human body fat. And so you just notice that there's so many correlations with the things that are happening with our food system. That, you know, as the GMOs started up in the mid to late 90s, it slowly started obesity rising, slowly started heart disease even larger. You know, you start seeing rises in a lot more things as certain trends in the industrialized food system happen. And everything happens for a reason, and you got to figure out what that reason is, and you got to tackle it at the source, not the, you know, I like to call healthcare really sick care, because the doctors, they'll keep you sick for as long as while because they don't seem to tackle it at, you know, a lifestyle choice difference. They give you a drug to keep you healthy for as long as they can, because they haven't decided to, you know, look at the source and the root cause of things.
So what advice would you give me if I wanted to, like, how would I start to make change in my better?
So the first thing you can do, I have an informative website link under my resources thing on my page, foodbabe.com, and I can give you my card too. And go there and read as much as you can about GMOs. And there's a couple of really great websites, like I mentioned, Institute of Responsible Technology. They even have PowerPoints that you can print off and give to your community. Just learn the material and watch Jeffrey Smith, who's the founder of that organization, give them, so you can just kind of learn, and then repeat the information. I mean, that is such a, like, this is something I did yesterday to a group of individuals in Charlotte at a Fresh Expo, because I think it's so important for them to realize, wow, why am I being a guinea pig eating this food? Like, shouldn't I have the right to know what I'm eating? And, well, how do I identify it when I go to the grocery store? How do I choose something that's not genetically modified? And how do I figure out brands that I can eat that are non-GMO project certified, and how can I spend my money? You know, I think that's one thing that is so crucial in how we vote every single day, is how we spend our money. If we continue to go to McDonald's and continue to go to Burger King, we're giving them money, they're going to continue to be there. If we stop giving them money and we stop giving the companies that have GMOs and are putting it in their food money, eventually they're going to wake up. And if enough of us do that, that's what happens. And that's how we grassroots from the ground up, because the government's not going to do it for us. It's just not going to happen. It's just too intertwined with the pharmaceutical industry and the chemical companies and big agriculture. So.
And as she was saying, I like to think of our dollars as a ballot and the cash register as a ballot box. And you know, every time we want to go support something, or we believe in a certain type or cause, we can go out there and we can vote with our dollars.